Hello. Today I wanted to answer some frequently asked questions, or at least what I believe would be frequently asked questions about cerebral palsy. Now, before I start, I must stress that I am not a doctor, I am in no way an expert, but I'm hoping that coming from a place of experience, as I have cerebral palsy myself, will make it a bit more approachable and maybe help you get some more knowledge about something that you may not know about already. But I must also stress, of course, if you need any sort of professional opinion, to go onto the right channels and seek out professional advice. Cerebral palsy is a condition, a disability, that occurs when there is brain damage either before birth in the womb, during birth, and slightly after birth. So this is brain damage that occurs in the baby's brain and kills off or damages some sort of cells. This brain damage could also come from perhaps the brain just generally not developing properly in the womb for whatever reason, or actual damage that occurs from an outside force or something like that. This means that the neurons in the brain do not fire off properly to certain limbs, causing motility issues. So cerebral palsy is kind of an umbrella term for many different types. So there's hemiplegia, which means that one side of your body is affected. Diplegia, which is what I have, where your legs are affected, and also quadriplegia, which means every limb is affected. There are also within that more complex sort of terms, but I'm not going to go into that now. So it is a lifelong condition caused by brain damage, as opposed to any sort of accident occurring to the actual body part itself. It's all within the brain, and I think that's a common misconception that I've come across quite a lot. People think that I've got into an accident of some kind because the physical look of cerebral palsy is akin to sort of damage from the outside, but it's actually all to do with my brain and damage that's occurred within my brain. Cerebral palsy can affect people in many different ways. Chiefly it's about mobility, so basically a difficulty in movement and sometimes dexterity. There's also generally difficulty in balance and strength of these muscles that are affected. A common side effect can also be fatigue, extreme fatigue, because you end up using a lot more energy just to move yourself around and get around day to day. Some effects linked to cerebral palsy are epilepsy, some learning difficulties sometimes in some people, and speech impediments and difficulty in speaking. I suppose that's because it's what's being affected in the brain. Again, it's very individual for every single person. You're not going to have any two people with cerebral palsy having the exact same effect or experience as with all disabilities. There's also a massive severity sort of difference. You know, you can have people who with cerebral palsy who walk and get around quite well and have a lot of a very mild case and a lot of mobility. And then you can have people with very severe cases where they're wheelchair bound or find it hard to do daily tasks and things like that. There is no cure at present for cerebral palsy. It's a lifelong condition that is something that just has to be managed. The good news is that there are a lot of ways it can be managed, mostly through exercise and staying active and exercising the muscles, making sure you retain as much mobility as you can. So that things like physiotherapy can be very good, and there's also surgeries and things that can be done to at least ease the effect of cerebral palsy. and the side effects of cerebral palsy. There's many different operations that you can have on your actual muscles themselves. For a cure, I suppose it would have to be something to do with brain surgery, and I don't think we're that far advanced, if we ever will be that advanced, because I suppose it would be to do with rectifying the damage that has been done on the brain, and I don't know how possible that is. Again, I'm not a neuroscientist, so I don't know. Cerebral palsy is not genetic. There is no genetic component for cerebral palsy. As explained, it is about damage that's occurred either before, during, or slightly after birth. So there is nothing to do with genetics, and someone with cerebral palsy shouldn't be worried about passing on a gene of some kind to their child that could give them cerebral palsy. I've actually heard a misconception before that people with cerebral palsy cannot have children. This is completely false. It has nothing to do with your fertility. That is to do with other medical issues, of course. Nothing to do with your reproductive organs, anything like that. So there's no need to worry. People with cerebral palsy can have children unless they have other medical issues to do with their fertility or reproductive organs. Of course, there are things to be raised, as with every physical disability, about sort of sex lives and things like that. But again, I think people will be surprised that a lot of disabled people find ways around physical difficulties in order to have very fulfilled sort of sex lives and physical intimate relationships. So that's also something that's not worth worrying about. Yes, people with cerebral palsy can lead a normal and long and fulfilled life. There may be a lot of tweaks that need to be made to their lives, either through equipment or the way that they manage certain day-to-day tasks. But cerebral palsy doesn't have to be life-limiting in any way. And thankfully we live in a very modern world, especially in Great Britain, where disabilities don't mean that, for the most part, that you're going to lead a limited life, because we have a lot of facilities here and a lot of means to help us. So yes, people with cerebral palsy can live a very normal life. A final bonus tip I would say is just to treat anyone with cerebral palsy and any sort of disability as normal as you would treat anyone else. I encourage people to ask questions and to explore and discuss any sort of issues as well as disability, and not be afraid to do so. I can understand it's quite an awkward subject to broach sometimes, and some people might not like it, but I don't see any harm in asking, as long as you understand that that person isn't entitled, isn't required to give you an answer, you know. But if anyone has any questions at all about cerebral palsy and my own experiences with it, please feel free to ask. I'm always happy to answer any questions, and I don't get offended easily, trust me. I hope this video has been helpful, and that you are now maybe a little bit more knowledgeable about cerebral palsy than perhaps you were before. Thank you.